And now I bring you Eric Topol. I am here with Dr. Eric Topol. Eric, thanks for joining me again.
Great to be with you, Sam.
So let's say you've been on the podcast. I forget when that was. It was a while back, but let's briefly introduce you properly. How do you describe your background and current perch in medicine?
Well, I'm an old dog. I've been around for a while now. In the early years, I was a cardiologist, but research was more in clinical trials. And then in the mid-90s, it switched to genomics and digital medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm at Scripps Research. I'm a professor of molecular medicine here and also executive vice president of the Scripps Research Institution.
Nice. Well, so I'm talking to you today just because I know you're a wonderful communicator of science and medicine, and just you just help people think about what is rational on this topic. And also, you've been very active on Twitter throughout the pandemic, just forwarding articles which you helpfully highlight for people, and just cutting through what has become truly a deluge of misinformation and disinformation and conspiracy thinking, malignant fantasies. It was just that we're now dealing with an information space that is so contaminated by the digital entrepreneurship of people with various convictions, that it's just very difficult to get to anything like ground truth around COVID and vaccines and sound public health advice, and this is coupled to a pervasive distrust in institutions now. I mean, people distrust the government, they distrust the media, they distrust science and scientists. Our medical journals have lost standing. Certainly organizations like the CDC and the WHO have fairly immolated their reputations over the last 18 months or so. And some of this is understandable. I mean, there really has been some terrible failures of public health messaging and instances of hypocrisy and doublethink. But rather than perform an autopsy on all of that, I want us to see if we can have a conversation about vaccines and vaccine hesitancy, and starting pretty much from first principles and from what we can be reasonably sure about in the current environment. So
Sam mentioned first principles there, and he's correct that you should start with first principles. If there was one thing that was beat into my head at MIT in the physics department, you should always reason from first principles. First principles are parts of a large body of facts and principles associated with some particular claim or subject matter that you are absolutely certain are correct and true. And it makes sense that if you reason from something you are absolutely certain is true, and you're logical in your reasoning, you will get to a worthwhile and correct conclusion. But the very first thing Dr. Topol does in a minute is he starts reasoning from the genome of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which was put together in a very, very fraudulent way. So he's reasoning from there, and of course all of his conclusions are wrong because he started with something that was not true. And it's a shame they didn't reason from first principles, because they would have caught some of the errors they made. And they didn't do it, though. And by the way, he was talking about the terrible hit to the reputation of our greatest, or formerly greatest, medical journals like the New England Journal of Medicine and the Lancet, the CDC, the WHO. The CDC and WHO lied the entire time. And the New England Journal of Medicine published at least one that I know of, I'm going to say, one article that didn't even get peer reviewed. It was the Dr. Zhu, ZHU, or ZHOU, mostly ZHU, paper on sequencing the genome, which was submitted, looked at, and published in 3 days. And so it didn't get peer review. And the Lancet did the same thing with some papers that have since been withdrawn. They've had to retract them. There's reasons why the public no longer trusts these medical institutions, really, and they are getting everything they deserve, as far as I'm concerned. They're subsidized by the big pharma, and I believe that had something to do with it. They published the papers, just rubber stamped them, and published the papers that they knew were helpful to the big pharma industry. And it's really, if people will follow through on it, it's they're going to pay a tremendous price for it.
You know, I have a few other things I want to say by way of getting us started here, but is there anything you want to say just to kick this off?
Well, your points in the intro here are spot on, Sam. The vaccine progression from the sequence of the SARS-CoV-2 in January 10th, to the clinical trial completed in November, and rolling out vaccines all in a matter of months is of historic significance. There's never been a vaccine that's been short of 8 years as the average, and many fail. So what we have here is one of the greatest triumphs in biomedicine in history. And
Okay, Eric is 100% wrong on this, and I'm going to prove it in just a second. By showing you a video that I really want you to watch and focus on every second of. It's the Mike Wallace expose of what occurred in 1976. Back in 1976, a virus and disease was created out of thin air, and the CDC and the government had 46 million people, members of the public, take a vaccine for a disease that had not a single confirmed case anywhere in the world. Can you imagine that? And you're going to see that repeated by David Sensor, who was the director of the CDC at the time. That vaccine rollout program was his baby, if you will. And in my book, Sanction the COVID Murders, which I've showed you already, but let me show it to you again very briefly. In this book, which is on Amazon, and I won't plug it too many times, I hope, but this book is the first volume of a 2,000-page work that I've already completed. I'm just polishing the volumes as they come out. In this book, I explain what happened in 1976 in even greater detail than Mike Wallace does, and it's a fabulous explanation of what happened, including the CDC naming a building after David Sensor, which was absurd, because that vaccine that he pushed on the public killed 674 people, paralyzed a very large number of people, and did not prevent even a single person from getting this so-called disease that was created by himself and the government. And you're going to hear all those details, and you're going to find it very hard to believe, but it's very important that you see that the government was involved in doing this to the public. So all the people that said during COVID, oh, there's no way the government would do that to the people, are just completely wrong. It's been done before, and I'm proving it with this video I'm going to show you. Now, Eric just made a major mistake when he said that the COVID vaccine rollout, which was called Operation Warp Speed, if you remember, was unprecedented in the history of American biology, world biology. It simply is not true at all. In 1976, the vaccine rollout started the vaccine production started right after David Sensor got the go-ahead from President Ford. And that was in February when that happened. And they finished in September because the rollout was on October 1st, which you will also hear. So it took 7 months for them to prepare and roll out the vaccine in 1976. In 2020, it took 11 months, 4 months longer. And Eric Topol's trying to say that the one in 2020 was unprecedented. Actually, it was more than 50%. It took more than 50% longer than what they did in 1976. Another similarity between the two times was that the vaccine that they got approval for was not the one that they injected into people. That was not tested in 1976. Can you believe that? They injected a vaccine that was never tested in the public. And believe it or not, the same thing happened in 2020. The injection that everybody got is not the one that received EUA approval. I know that because the one that received EUA approval was based on the PCR, polymerase chain reaction amplification process. That got the approval. And then the one that was injected into the arms, the messenger RNA amplification, because you need to make billions of copies of it, right? Was made by a plasmid E. coli process. And that was never tested in the public. Can you believe they injected these things into the arms of the public without ever testing them in trials? All those trials were for the PCR method of amplifying the modified RNA. Actually, they amplified the messenger RNA, and then they were pseudo-uridinated later, before the trials. It's just incredible that they got away with this. So that's all going to be crystal clear, and I'm going to go over the problems with the E. coli and plasmid process that was used in 2020, and you're just not going to believe what the big pharma got away with. So let's watch that video in its entirety. It's only 14 minutes long, and I really want everyone to watch this and listen very carefully.
The flu season is upon us. Which type will we worry about this year? And what kind of shots will we be told to take? Remember the swine flu scare of 1976? That was the year the U.S. government told us all that swine flu could turn out to be a killer that could spread across the nation. And Washington decided that every man, woman, and child in the nation should get a shot to prevent a nationwide outbreak, a pandemic. Well, 46 million of us obediently took the shot. And now 4,000 Americans are claiming damages from Uncle Sam amounting to $3.5 billion because of what happened when they took that shot. By far the greatest number of the claims, 2/3 of them, are for neurological damage or even death, allegedly triggered by the flu shot. We pick up the story back in 1976 when the threat posed by the swine flu virus seemed very real indeed.
This virus was the cause of a pandemic in 1918 and 1919 that
By the way, President Ford is wrong there. The pandemic of 1918 and 1919 was not caused by the swine flu virus. It was not, and it's been proven not to have been caused by a transmissible contagious agent. That's been proved by Dwayne Ritchie on Angel Island in San Francisco, and by Milton Rosenau, pardon me, in Gallops Island in Boston. It's been proved extensively and in great detail. It's shocking when you read the papers, the attempts they made to see if they could transmit the swine flu in 1918 and 1919. They simply could not infect a healthy person by using the mucus the lung secretions, everything they could do, the blood, etc., of a sick person. And we'll talk about that in the future probably. I'll make another video about it. But the swine flu did not cause the Spanish flu of 1918 and 1919. Let's continue.
Resulted in over 500,000 deaths in the United States, as well as 20 million deaths around the world.
See how easy it is to...
Thus, the U.S. government's publicity machine was cranked into action to urge all America to protect itself against the swine flu menace.
Influenza is serious business. During major flu epidemics, millions of people are sick and thousands die. Well, this year you can get...
By the way, this is a fake video here. They're not injecting the people with the vaccine here. When you inject a vaccine, you do so in the deltoid muscle, which is way up on the top of your arm. This thing that's pretending to be injected into this man who doesn't even react to it is being injected very close to his elbow. I don't know if you can see my pointer, but the deltoid is way up here where this shadow is at the top of his arm. This guy's missing it by 6 inches at least, which is really ridiculous. You know, they didn't even get a medical person, a nurse or a doctor to explain that this looks so idiotic, it's unbelievable. And we're going to see some really horrible things that the United States government did in this propaganda campaign that you're just not going to believe they are capable of doing to the citizens of the United States. And it's very upsetting to watch this. But look where he's injecting that thing. It's down near the patient's elbow. Remember that, because I'm going to show you a real injection later in this video. You're not going to believe the difference.
protection. The vaccines are safe, easy to take, and they can protect you against flu. So roll up your sleeve.
Okay, so, they're saying the vaccines are safe and so forth. That's not at all the case, and it wasn't the case during COVID either. The vaccines are very dangerous. This campaign in 1976 ended up killing 674 people, 300 of them from Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's just horrible what's done to people in the name of science and protecting them sometimes by our own government.
Protect yourself.
One of those who did roll up her sleeve was Judy Roberts. She was perfectly healthy, an active woman, when in November of 1976, she took her shot. 2 weeks later, she says, she began to feel a numbness starting up her legs.
I joked about it at that time. I said I'll be numb to the knees by Friday if this keeps up. By the following week, I was totally paralyzed.
So completely paralyzed, in fact, that they had to operate on her.
She was so paralyzed, completely paralyzed, that she couldn't even move. She couldn't even move her diaphragm down when she needed to take a breath. So they had to put a tracheostomy tube in her, which I've put in lots of as a thoracic surgeon. But you can see the scar there on her neck, and what a horrible closure that is by some doctor. Good Lord. But that shows you the very dire straits she was in when they needed to put a tracheostomy tube in her throat, which goes straight into the trachea, and breathes for her. This lady suffered tremendously over this terrible vaccine they gave back in 1976.
To enable her to breathe. And for 6 months, Judy Roberts was a quadriplegic. The diagnosis? A neurological disorder called Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS for short. These neurological diseases are little understood. They affect people in different ways. As you can see in these home movies taken by a friend, Judy Roberts' paralysis confined her mostly to a wheelchair for over a year. But this disease can even kill. Indeed, there are 300 claims now pending from the families of GBS victims who died, allegedly as a result of the swine flu shot. In other GBS victims, the crippling effects diminish and all but disappear. But for Judy Roberts, progress back to good health has been painful and partial.
Now, I noticed that your smile, Judy, is a little bit constricted.
Yes, it is.
Is it different from what it used to be?
Very different. I have a greatly decreased mobility in my lips. And I can't drink through a straw on the right-hand side. I can't blow out birthday candles. I don't whistle anymore, for which my husband is grateful.
It may be a little difficult for you to answer this question, but have you recovered as much as you are going to recover?
Yes, this is it.
So you will now have a legacy of braces on your legs for the rest of your life?
Yes, the weakness in my hands will stay, and the leg braces will stay.
So Judy Roberts and her husband have filed a claim against the U.S. government. They're asking $12 million, though they don't expect to get nearly that much.
Judy, why did you take the flu shot?
I'd never taken any other flu shots, but I felt like this was going to be a major epidemic. And the only way to prevent a major epidemic of a really deadly variety of flu was for everybody to be immunized.
Where did this so-called deadly variety of flu, where did it first hit back in 1976? It began right here at Fort Dix in New Jersey in January of that year, when a number of recruits began to complain of respiratory ailments, something like the common cold. An Army doctor here sent samples of their throat cultures to the New Jersey Public Health Lab to find out just what kind of bug was going around here. One of those samples was from a Private David Lewis who had left his sickbed to go on a forced march. Private Lewis had collapsed on that march, and his sergeant had revived him by mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. But the sergeant showed no signs of illness.
Remember, please, the details of this. They just said that the guy was sick before the forced march occurred, but he collapsed on the march. But he had to get out of bed to take the forced march. And also that when he collapsed, his sergeant revived him with mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. But the sergeant never got sick. So all these details are very, very important, as they would be in a legal case, in a courtroom or something, and in medical analysis. So please listen to the details of this very carefully.
A few days later, Private Lewis died.
If this disease is so potentially fatal that it's going to kill a young, healthy man, a middle-aged school teacher doesn't have prayer.
The New Jersey lab identified most of those soldiers' throat cultures as the normal kind of flu virus going around that year, but they could not make out what kind of virus was in the culture from the dead soldier and from 4 others who were sick. So they sent those cultures to the Federal Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia for further study. A few days later, they got the verdict: swine flu.
But that much publicized outbreak of swine flu at Fort Dix involved only Private Lewis, who died, and those 4 other soldiers who recovered completely without the swine flu shot.
If I had known at that time that the boy had been in a sick bed, got up, went out on a forced march, and then collapsed and died, I would never have taken the shot.
The rationale for our recommendation was not on the basis of the death of a single individual, but it was on the basis that when we do see a change in the characteristics of the influenza virus, it is a massive public health problem in this country.
Now, this is David Sensor, who I think Mike Wallace is going to introduce to you. But this is the chairman of the CDC who pushed this vaccine, ran the development of it, etc., all for a disease for which there was not a single confirmed case anywhere in the world during the 7 months it took from President Ford's approval of the program to when the rollout occurred on October 1st. And wow, to think that they recommended and did a propaganda campaign, and were even deceitful in that, as you'll find out soon, a propaganda campaign for a vaccine that did not have a single case confirmed anywhere in the world for the disease that vaccine was supposed to protect you from is just incredible. It really is. This is downright evil. I mean, and this, believe it or not, the same thing occurred with COVID, and I'll explain all of it to you. I can prove every bit of what I say.
Dr. David Sensor, then head of the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, is now in private industry. He devised the swine flu program, and he pushed it. You began to give flu shots to the American people in October of 76.
October 1st.
By that time, how many cases of swine flu around the world had been reported?
There had been several reported, but none confirmed. There had been cases in Australia that were reported by the press, by the news media. There were cases in...
None confirmed. Did you ever uncover any other outbreaks of swine flu anywhere in the world?
No.
Now, nearly everyone was to receive the shot in a public health facility where...
Okay, I hope you saw that, but I'll back it up a tiny bit and you'll see it.
Nearly everyone was to receive the shot in a...
Okay, do you see the difference in where she's getting her injection? This is a real injection here. You see it's at the very top of the arm, right by the shoulder, and that's the deltoid muscle. The other guy was getting it injected way down by his elbow, just to show you the flippant nature in which propaganda is sometimes foisted on the public. It's just pathetic to see the way they did this entire program. It's just so upsetting to see this, that our government would lie to us in so many ways about this thing.
Public health facility where a doctor might not be present. Therefore, it was up to the CDC to come up with some kind of official consent form, giving the public all the information it needed about the swine flu shot. This form stated that the swine flu vaccine had been tested. What it didn't say was that after those tests were completed, the scientists developed another vaccine, and that was the one given to most of the 46 million who took the shot.
Okay, did you understand that? This is so important. The vaccine that was tested and got approval is not the one that was injected into the public, which was not tested at all. And the same exact thing happened during the COVID era. All those trials that Eric Topol is going to talk about in a minute, Dr. Topol, were for the were a formulation that was put together with the PCR amplification process. But the ones that were injected into the public were assembled with the E. coli and plasmid amplification process. It is so important to know that all you people that got these vaccines, none of them were tested before they were injected into you. It's just almost impossible to believe, but it's true.
Vaccine was called X53A.
Was X53A ever field tested?
I can't say. I would have to...
It wasn't.
I don't know.
That's called lying through your teeth, ladies and gentlemen. This thing was his baby. Testing a vaccine is an enormous undertaking. And for him to say just 3 years earlier, because this video that Mike Wallace is making here was made in 1979. But for him to try to say that he can't remember whether it was tested in the field, in other words, tested on the public, before it was injected into them, is an example of not telling the truth. I'll be nice about it, but it's a lie. He definitely knew it was not tested.
Well, I would think that you're in charge of the program.
I would have to check the records. I haven't looked at this in some time.
The information form, the consent form, was also supposed to warn people about any risks of serious complications following the shot. But did it?
No, I had never heard of any reactions other than a sore arm, fever, this sort of thing.
Judy Roberts' husband, Gene, also took the shot.
Yes, I looked at that document. I signed it. Nothing on there said I was going to have a heart attack or I get Guillain-Barré, which I never heard of.
What if people from the government, from the Center for Disease Control, what if they had indeed known about it? What would be your feeling?
They should have told us.
Did anyone ever come to you and say, you know something, fellas? There's the possibility of neurological damage.
if you get into a mass immunization program?
No.
No one ever did?
No.
Do you know Michael Hapwick?
Yes.
Dr. Michael Hapwick directed the surveillance team for the swine flu program at the CDC. His job was to find out what possible complications could arise from taking the shot and to report his findings to those in charge.
Did you know ahead of time, Dr. Hapwick, that there had been case reports of neurological disorders, neurological illness, apparently associated with the injection of influenza vaccine?
Absolutely.
You did?
Yes.
How'd you know that?
By review of the literature.
So you told your superiors, the men in charge of the swine flu immunization program, about the possibility of neurological disorders?
Absolutely.
What would you say if I told you that your superiors say that you never told them about the possibility of neurological complications?
That's nonsense. I can't believe that they would say that they did not know that there were neurological illnesses associated with influenza vaccination. That simply is not true. We did know that.
I've said that Dr. Hapwick had never told me of his feelings on this subject.
Then he's lying.
I guess you would have to make that assumption.
Then why does this report from your own agency, dated July 1976, list neurological complications as a possibility?
I think...
All right, I'm going to let him answer, but I'm just telling you, this is another lie by David Censor. I mean, on his own department memorandum publications, it says that neurological deficits are part of this vaccine, and he's trying to say that Dr. Hapwick never made it known that that was the case. He's lying again. It's just obvious. Plus, we know that flu vaccines always have neurological complications. And he did a literature search, which is like a freshman in medical school thing. It's really pathetic to see Dr. Censor, who was the chairman of the CDC, the same job that Rochelle Walensky had when she was lying about everything. It's shameful that he also lies like this.
I think the consensus of the scientific community was that the evidence relating neurologic disorders to influenza immunization was such that they did not feel that this association was a real one.
You didn't feel it was necessary to tell the American people that information?
Okay, the same issues occurred this time with the consent forms. I'll tell you, I remember very distinctly a man in Canada who was screaming over the phone at the clinic that injected his son with the vaccination because that boy ended up getting myocarditis, and it was not in the consent form people were asked to read and sign. And of course the CDC knew that myocarditis was a complication. And what about the other 1,300 complications that occurred after one injection? I mean, I'll admit, as a surgeon, that a lot of people just, when you give them the consent form, they just go to the bottom and sign it. They don't read it. But some people do read it. And you must put everything that is known, that is a known complication of the procedure that you're doing up to and including death. You must list everything so that the public will know what they're signing up for. And it's shameful that the United States government and CDC and other people who are putting these vaccines out, including the big pharma, rarely, if ever, put all the complications on there. Because people need to know before they agree to doing something. It's very important. Especially something like a vaccination for a disease that didn't even exist in the case of 1976. It's just incredible.
I think that over the years we have tried to inform the American people as fully as possible.
As part of informing Americans about the swine flu threat, Dr. Sensor's CDC also helped create the advertising to get the public to take the shot.
Let me read to you from one of your own agency's memos planning the campaign to urge Americans to take the shot. The swine flu vaccine has been taken by many important persons, he wrote. Example, President Ford, Henry Kissinger, Elton John, Muhammad Ali, Mary Tyler Moore, Rudolph Nureyev, Walter Cronkite, Ralph Nader, Edward Kennedy, etc., etc. True?
I'm not familiar with that particular piece of paper, but I do know that at least of that group, President Ford did take the vaccination.
Did you talk to these people beforehand to find out if they planned to take the shot?
I did not know.
Did anybody?
I do not know.
Did you get permission to use their names in your campaign?
I do not know.
Mary, did you take a swine flu shot?
No, I did not.
Did you give them permission to use your name saying that you had or were going to?
Absolutely not. Never did.
Did you ask your own doctor about taking the swine flu shot?
Yes, and at the time he thought it might be a good idea. But I resisted it because I was leery of having the symptoms that sometimes go with that kind of inoculation.
So you didn't?
No, I didn't.
Have you spoken to your doctor since?
Yes.
And?
He's delighted that I didn't take that shot.
You're in charge. Somebody's in charge.
This
is your advertising strategy that I have a copy of here.
Who's it signed by?
This one is unsigned. But you'll acknowledge that it was your baby, so to speak.
It could have been from the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. It could be from CDC. I don't know. I'll be happy to take responsibility for it.
It's been 3 years now since you fell ill with GBS, right?
Right.
Has the federal government, in your estimation, played fair with you about your claim?
No, I don't think so. It seems to be dragging on and on and on, and really no end in sight that I can see at this point.
With respect to the cases of Guillain-Barré, allegedly...
Former Secretary...
Okay, we can stop it here. You could see the guilt on the face of David Sensor there about all the lies. I mean, he got caught lying to the public, and it caused a lot of them to lose their lives, a lot of the public I'm talking about. And, you know, this is so upsetting. You see a distinguished head of a major medical three-letter agency in the United States being caught lying about the most important issues associated with a vaccine, and prevaricating after almost every question that's asked of him about the critical issues associated with that vaccine and the rollout and the propaganda and so forth. And the same thing was done in the United States. We've got people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Howard Stern and Jennifer Aniston and all these people, even Scott Adams, you know, who created the cartoon Dilbert, which everybody loves and everything, shaming people for not getting vaccinated, when of course they were all wrong. This stuff is fairly complicated, and a lot of people don't understand it. I mean, we've got Sam Harris and Eric Topol here who are just completely wrong on everything they've said so far. And I'm going to prove it all. And every single thing that I've stopped the video for so far, I've proved. I even made a big deal out of this in my book. You can see David Sensor there and Rochelle Walensky, and I was talking about their different ways of reacting to the lies they told in this part of the book. But I'll tell you, it's so disgraceful, and no one has paid any price for it yet. But I think those things will change in the future. I really do this time. I mean, it's ridiculous. The problem, though, partially, is that people like Sam and Eric Topol don't answer people that write them letters on Twitter, send them messages on Twitter, asking to get together and discuss the major issues of this incredible undertaking of vaccinating people for a disease with a brand new vaccination platform. they just rejected, for example, my request to vaccinate. Now, Dr. Bhattacharya is different. When I wrote him a letter, he agreed to discuss it, and we thought we were going to do 1 hour together, and we ended up doing 24 hours together because it was enjoyable for both of us, and we felt like we were doing something of great benefit for the public. But of course, YouTube took a bunch of our videos down, which is really incredible when you think about it. Two well-meaning doctors discussing something of tremendous importance, and YouTube took some of the videos down. Isn't that amazing? I'll tell you. I was going to leave this for later, but Vivek Murthy, who was the Surgeon General at the time, was working with Nick Clegg of Facebook to get the platforms and the pages, the Facebook pages of some people they call the Disinfo Dozen, taken down. And this is the Surgeon General now. Nick Clegg isn't a doctor, and Vivek Murthy is an administrative doctor. He was the Surgeon General. And I've read some of the things that have been said by the Disinfo Dozen, and I agree that a lot of them are misinformation. And we'll discuss this part about censorship later, but I'll tell you, they really had no business taking down people's pages on Facebook because they thought it was misinformation. A lot of the things that they said on their Facebook pages were wrong. But you have to let people speak and let the public decide for themselves, because some of the things that the Disinfo Dozen are saying are true, or they're later proved to be true. Some of them were completely idiotic. But to take away their chance to share with the public what they believe to be true is a horrible thing. Some of that information, if it is correct, could be used by the public to protect them against a deadly vaccine or disease. Now, you have to give the credit more public. People aren't stupid. They're going to listen to a lot of different opinions on something like this, and they're going to decide what to do on their own. So let's continue on now, back to a contagion of bad ideas, which is what Sam has named his podcast with Eric Topol, and they're going to get into some real trouble calling things misinformation that actually were true. We'll get to that right now.